Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. For now, I'm going to hand over to our first speakers, Bernard.
So, good afternoon everybody, or good morning, depending on what part of the planet you're on. Welcome to the Netherlands, where I'm based, and the room around me is my home office, which has been part of my life for the last 15 months because of these travel restrictions, and probably for a couple of weeks more, but we're all going in the right directions. As you'll see, I have several hats on. One of them is I'm a board member of Plastiques, and I will take you today a little bit in the world of the recycling of maritime ropes and fishing gear, obsolete fishing gear. The photo you see in front of you, I have a long background in plastic converting and plastic recycling and using the recyclates on a very high level, what today is called circular. I'm sitting on a bench which is 3D printed out of 100% recycled plastic. The bench weighs about 60 kilos. So I'm always stating it's not a lack of technology which is holding us back. It's sometimes between years. There are a few things around circularity, especially from, let's say, the European perspective, but I guess it goes for most part of the world. We see that I mean, of course, discussion about recycling is more than just packaging. I mean, there's a lot of applications which are not so much in the loop at the moment, but there is a lot of need for a lot of products to be better disassembled, to be produced to be disassembled. We see a lot of multi-material uses in applications where there might be a need to harmonize it. There may be a need for using the recyclate. So it's not only designed for recycling, but it's certainly also designed with what we then call green plastics, and I will come back why we call it green plastics. And of course, there's a huge discussion of what is the best way to collect waste streams to add the maximum value and for the next in the chain. And what we've seen in the last 20, 30 years, at least in Europe, but I think that also goes for a lot of countries outside of Europe, is that industry is sometimes hesitating in taking the proactive role, and we see that sometimes then legislation comes in to be part of an accelerator. You've seen these kind of images, so I don't leave them on the screen for a long time, but I mean, these are pictures which you find even in my home country, the Netherlands, which does have a pretty good waste system. Some pictures, most of them I made myself, but not all. Waste is everywhere. And the handling of waste is everywhere. This was not shown in the first part, but also animal life is being hurt quite extensively during these processes. So from a European perspective, in the last 2 years by now, several legislation have come up to tackle litter issues. Here are just a few of them. A few important ones, I would say there's a big drive also for Europe, but it also has to do with geopolitics, to go into a more circular way of working and a more circular economy. We, of course, import quite a lot of our feedstock, but we only use it short time, and then we dispose of it either by incineration or landfilling. And there's a need to change that, especially when you look at the global growth of the population and the will of people to also go into a more luxury part of life. There's a big need to do that. So there are a set of legislation which have been introduced in the European part. Some of them will certainly be copied or adapted to other parts of the world. And there are a few key drivers. So one of them is, for example, the Port Reception Facilities Directive, which gives a completely different role to the ports. I will come back to that. There was also, of course, a directive on single use, which of course is part of directly linked to litter issues. And in there, which is interesting, although most of the items mentioned are packaging, also fishing gear and ropes have been mentioned because they're in the top 10 most found littered items. There are a lot of discussion. People call recycling when you just collect it, and this is simply not correct. So what also happened, although it was already in the Waste Framework Directive in Europe since 2008, this is now also the definition in the Circular Economy package and the other packages. So recycling actually means turning waste into raw material. It doesn't mean turning waste into energy or incinerate it. It doesn't mean to put it somewhere under a road. Recycling is holding the material back, transforming waste streams into valuable raw materials. And so collection is important, logistics are important, sorting is important, but it's not recycling. And I think that's what was badly needed also in the European perspective to deal with it. Although I was already working for about 20 years in the plastic and dealing with plastic recycling and building recycling plants and operating them, I think it was only thanks to the fact that we started to work. I'm also one of the founders of Waste Free Ocean, by the way, that we started to work with the fishing community. That also myself, I started to realize how much plastic was used in the maritime industry. And talking to fishermen and fishing communities, we also heard about the stories of them having issues with getting rid of their obsolete nets and waste streams. Especially in Belgium, where we did our first Fishing for Litter project under the umbrella of Waste Free Oceans. We also involved other maritime industry players like the dredging industry. For those who are not so familiar with that, if you look on a global scale, the 4 larger dredging companies in the world, they are based in the Benelux, so in Belgium and the Netherlands. So, and of course, when dredging, you scrap sea floors and the floor of rivers and the floor of, and you collect a lot of waste. And also they find a lot of waste into their pumps, which stopped them from operating. So there was a win-win situation when starting to talk with them, and it gave us a lot of learnings. Of course, cleanups, we also from plastic side, we support cleanups in several countries. And in the end, you also have to do data collection. So we use also some data collection tools, which we support in several countries. Going back to the role of ports. We see that the maritime industry, and you have all vessels, so people point to fishermen, but there are certainly more users of the waterways in the world which leave waste going astray. There's actually a word for it. It's called the blue shelf. So if you go on a sailing ship or on a maritime ship and somebody says, just put it on the blue shelf, it means tip it overboard. And this just has to stop. And one of the considerations, at least after a lot of discussions on the European level, is we have to facilitate that the ports accept the waste without any additional payments. So it has to be kind of integrated into the port fees which you pay when you just enter your ports. This has been agreed. It is now in the process of being implemented. And of course, not all ports are happy with that because it makes them also kind of waste management system or a treatment system or a waste collector or whatever. On the other hand, it also makes it maybe easier for the recyclers and waste collectors to deal with just one party. Because if you just look at, let's say, the fishing community in Europe, we got about 85,000 ships. All of them are entities, local entities. If you need to make an agreement with all of them, it's a lot of paperwork. If you can make agreements with ports, you have just one entity to make a deal upon. And as I said, we also find a lot of ropes and other things coming from oil platforms, leisure boats. So it's certainly not only the fishing industry. And a lot of people look at the outside, but if you think that, let's say 40% of the activities is done in inland waters, like lakes or rivers, it's certainly not only an issue which is dealt with the saltwater. There's also discussion with the maritime industry on loss of gear. This was a presentation a couple of days ago during the European Maritime Days, which was also virtual. A few months ago, one of those big container ships lost some containers near the Dutch coast in the UNESCO World Heritage Area. Here you see some beautiful pictures of how it looks like when containers then open up. And again, I've told it also in that presentation, maybe this was still a little bit fortunate because in the Netherlands, at least we have the money and the infrastructure to deal with it. And a lot of volunteers came here and nobody was arguing about the cost of the containers. It was prepaid by the authorities. And now there's going to be a battle with the insurance companies. But other places in the world don't have that facility. So if containers go astray somewhere else, it may be a big issue and nobody's cleaning it up. In that same area, a couple of years ago, we launched our first fishing net recycling collection scheme together with a seal center. And it just actually happened by incident. The picture you see on the back is actually a mountain of nets, which was collected by the seal center as a kind of protest monument, dealing with entanglement of seals. And the fishing community and the seal center were not natural friends. Let's put it politically that way. When I came there just by accident, visiting the plant with my children, we saw this heap and this mountain of nets. And my wife said, "Oh, there's the holiday again," because I was, of course, looking now for the managing director of the seal center to see whether we could help them to solve the issue. as we were just starting to build the recycling facility in Denmark to recycle fishing gear. And then he said, listen, it's not only about the mountain, we need to go proactively and we need to turn it into a project. So the project was then baptized Happy Seal, because we said we don't want to have the dirty sea or the whatever. Let's make it fun, and let's make it also easy accessible for children to understand what we are doing. So here you see the first logo of a black seal. By that time, I was not aware that seals were brown or gray and not black, but that was the logo they proposed, so that's what we did. And we managed to get several recyclers and all the ports in the UNESCO port areas, and both the fishing communities, organizations joined the project. And this was a project without hardly any budget. I mean, it was prepaid by Plastics and my company. And we just kicked off. And then 6 weeks later, you see on the bottom of this slide, fishermen rescued a black seal, which is as rare as, let's say, an albino. And this became the live symbol of our project. And on this picture, you see that we baptized her Happy as part of Happy Seal. And we bring her back to wildlife here on fishing boats together with 3 fishermen and the director of the Seal Center, and release her and 2 other seals back to wildlife. And you see that we have put some nets over the cages while we were on fishing boats with fishermen. So what I'm pointing is here is you can discuss about very controversial issues if you create win-win situations. Because those fishermen, we were standing in the middle of the UNESCO World Heritage on a sandbank on low tide. This was Dutch national television. And they said, this is the first time in the last 3 years we get any positive media. So of course we want to stop. Of course we want to help you and your others to accomplish what we are going for. And we're very happy. And they all brought their own families. And meanwhile, all of the fishermen have adopted seals. They are helping the Seal Center. The Seal Center is helping the fishermen. So where they were, let's say, not natural friends at the beginning, they're working together now. So that is already an achievement on its own. Then, of course, how does it being processed? So here you see just one image of the factory in Denmark. This is already chopped fishing gear. And this goes into an extruder. So this is already at the end of the process. I can't show you all the black boxes for obvious reasons. And then, of course, the granules come out and they are used for other applications. In this factory, we run mainly the maritime ropes and gear from polyethylene and polypropylene. There are also fishing gear from nylon. They are mostly dealt with at the moment by Aquafil in Slovenia, who go through a chemical process. And this is a mechanical process. At the early days when we set up the factory, with the learnings we had, for example, from the packaging industry, so okay, let's put a wall and some pieces of rope. If people at the sorting center, which is basically on our yard, need some help or are not sure what type of rope it is, they can have a look. And I was very optimistic because we thought it was just maybe 5 or 10 pieces of rope which we would see. This is just a part of the wall you can see now. We have found about 700 different material mixtures in a relatively small industry. So there's an urgent need for circular design in this industry. And this is also part now of the extended producer responsibility scheme, which is being put upon this industry by the European Commission. And this is badly needed because if you look at it from a volume perspective, let's say on a polymer perspective, it is not a huge industry. But if you see how many different materials are being used together, it is a kind of nightmare. So to be very honest, I would say half of what you see on the picture is completely not recyclable at this stage, or it's going to cost a fortune. Of course, we also see there's the growth in aquaculture. And of course, if you take back aquaculture, nets, for example, it's not only the net, but you also got all those rings. So we also work to recycle those rings. Here you see some granules of recycled rings, which can then be used, of course, to make new rings. Of course, if you don't have to recycle them and can reuse them straight away, it's even better. But even if they're broken, it's still valuable raw material. And the same, of course, we try to do with the material from the nets. I think a lot of you already know the wording compression molding. So one of the easier and oldest technologies, of course, is if you're not 100% sure of what the material is made of, or if there is some leftover pollution, you can compress mold it. And one of the first things we did is making picnic sets out of fishing gear. So these are 100% recycled fishing gear, polyethylene picnic sets. And of course, being still a little bit naive after 25 years, we thought every single fishing port would buy those things. The reality is slightly different, but at least we could show that this was one of the opportunities you could make. On that, we put this QR code, so people, if they would visit on the bench, this is a beach in Denmark, people could learn about the story, and it's a kind of education tool which we developed. And slowly and gradually, we started to work into other things. So also in the back of my office, you'll see those piggies. We came into contact with a startup, and they had mold to make this kind of furniture issues. It's a side table. And I just challenged them that I would be able to make that out of fishing gear. And of course, they said it couldn't be done. And here you are. This is the number one, 100% content recycled fishing gear. And if you look at it from a polymer perspective, the material is not even suitable to do that. But it just happened, and it was 100% right. So it also shows you that just if you buy Recyclate, just buy a data sheet, it's not always the one which you will be able to do. So this was the first example in rotomolding. You already saw one in 3D printing. So this is 3D printed maritime ropes, polypropylene. My son is sitting in it. You can see a bit the size of it. It's about 60 kilos. And this is done by granules into, so it's not about the normal small table 3D printer. It's a robot which is dealing straight from the granules into 3D printing. And you can make beautiful things out of this. And just to show you a little bit what kind of products have been made with fishing gear and ropes already. In all the applications, basically all technical possibilities in plastic processing, we have tried the material and we came out successful. Here's some more. So there's so much thing you can do once you have the material and once you control the process and the quality. Then of course COVID came, so together with a partner in Portugal, we designed COVID masks. So the green parts are made out of recycled fishing gear. The one on the bottom is are what we call the ear savers. So you can wear a mask, and instead of having the elastics behind your ears, you can protect it like you do with a helmet. And here you see a brave man doing his gardening, and he's using it as a protective tool for protecting his eyes when he's doing and cutting his hedge. And here you see some doctors wearing it. So, I mean, these kind of things, we also try to do our part of it. We even managed to turn fishing gear into a number of bottles. Is that the best application? No, but to convince maybe people in the converting industry that it's easier to convert a shampoo bottle into a shampoo bottle instead of a fishing gear into a shampoo bottle, it can be done. So if there is a need to do this kind of applications, yes, you can do that. Yeah. And if then you see a retailer or a brand owner saying that they don't even know how to recycle a polyethylene bottle into a polyethylene bottle, said, hey, come on, where's the talent? We can even put it from a fishing gear into a bottle. Yeah. Here another tool we made. This is a bench used in kindergartens, and so children are sitting on it. It's 100% recycled content in rotomolding again. Then we went to see some people in the automotive applications that, can you use this material? Because the automotive industry is also thinking about more sustainability. So we use fishing gear to make the inside panels of a gearbox protection. Now, of course, we're looking to get everything approved and for mass production, but also these kind of applications we have been able to do. But of course, the main goal and our real goal was to go back to fibers, from fishing gear to fishing gear, or from ropes to rope. And about a year and a half ago, we managed to, together with one of the converters, to pull the first fibers from mechanically recycled plastic. I mean, from chemical recycled plastic, it can be done earlier because you take out the sand and the silt and all the other things. Mechanical recycling, it took a bit longer to actually go there. But this was about a year and a half ago. But still, we couldn't make the ropes, but at least we could already make the fibers. And then about a month ago, meanwhile, we told the world that we managed to make the first rope out of maritime rope. And here we go. And this time it's blue. The slogan, by the way, in plastics is where blue meets green. Looking to the green economy and the blue economy. And this is a rope. I got a piece in my hand here. So this is now commercially available. 100% recycled maritime ropes into maritime ropes. And this, of course, is the highest added value you can think of, because this is going into circularity. And there's a lot of things you can do. So I've heard earlier today also people talking about downcycling. I don't use that word, because there are applications that are better. There are certainly streams where we will certainly need chemical recycling to deal with it, but anything better than landfill. And if you look at other applications, just to a grip, I mean, if I can make a rope, I can make all these kind of applications pretty easily. So anglers could use this. Would you put the cruise line to the first rope? I would say, let's give that another year or so. But if you look what already could be made today, it's enormous. And this market we should grab. And by doing that, we could also make sure that there is a growing added value for the waste streams evolving from it. And then maybe those waste pickers who now don't have a value for the things and just left them on the ground, maybe in the end we could give them money to actually do the collection. Yeah. These are coming to market soon. These are 3 products which are coming up quite shortly, so somewhere this year. Again, rotomolded. One is a big flower pot. One is a seat for the children. Then let's have a quick look at this one. When we built the factory, there were 2 investments where some of the shareholders had some concerns. We invested 1.5 million in a laboratory, an internal laboratory, to do quality check of the inputs and all the outputs, which in the recycling world, in Europe at least today, is quite common. It was totally not common 10, 15 years ago. Yeah. And we also did spend quite some money on a very extensive LCA, because people, of course, when they hear that we bring in ropes from Alaska and New Zealand to make it into recyclates in Denmark, they say that's not very sustainable. I can assure you, even by doing that, we can still save a huge amount of CO2 emission by using this recyclate back into other applications. Yeah. And we don't even did the calculation on, let's say, ghost gear and these kind of things. And then my final slide. People sometimes question whether I have thought about it, but at least you can't deny that Albert Einstein didn't think about it. We have to think out of the box. We have to think differently to deal with some of the issues we have on hand, which goes far beyond, let's say, just recycling fishing gear or recycling a bottle or a box. But I know we are clever enough on the world, and there's enough clever people out there. Think about box, try and error, but start doing it. And I'm available to answer questions on various topics all afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bernard. That was wonderful to hear, and I think you brought up a lot of things that people may not have considered before. I see there are some questions that have come through so far, but I think we'll hold off until after all the presentations have been made, and then we'll address all the questions as one. If everyone's happy with that. Nicholas, are you ready to go ahead?
Hi, everybody. My name's Nick Stilwell. I'm sitting here in sunny England, where it never rains. I run 2 small companies, very small companies. I could never afford a nice laboratory like Bernard. So one is Protomax and one is Stormboard. And essentially, I'm a machine builder. So I came up with this idea of how can we use the worst plastics that are lying around and make them into products that people can use locally in that area. So these are contaminated plastics, especially films, multi-layer films. And where should it be used? Areas initially, I was looking at Haiti, because there was the big earthquake there. How can we get machines over there? I saw lots of plastic in all the photos, and everyone was put in tents. And 7 years later, they were still in tents. So what can we do that? Can we use that plastic? Places where concrete is difficult, where steel is difficult, where there's a lack of wood, but there's loads and loads of plastic that can be reused. So I developed a thing called Stormboard. Now, this is essentially an expanded board that competes with plywood. So we wanted it lightweight, similar weight to plywood. And we wanted to use the worst possible plastic in it because it's free, it's lying around, it's not going anywhere. There's lots of good uses for good plastics that can be re-extruded and molded. But what about the worst stuff, which got, if you think about your packaging for a sandwich, it's got different types of plastic, plus cardboard, plus the remains of the sandwich in it, probably. And so we decided to make an 8 foot by 4 foot sheet. It's about as boring as you can get in products. But we use a lot of them. In the UK, we get through about 30 million plywood sheets a year, and that's not including MDF or OSB. So we started off with a really, really tiny machine, you can see on the left there, in 2009, and we were going around the waste companies, or recycling companies as they sometimes call themselves, trying to show them, get interest in it. There was absolutely none. No one was interested. Everyone was happy to give us our waste. No one was happy to do anything with it. But by 2015, we were building factories. But we still hadn't got to the point of how can we get a factory out to areas that really need it. So we came up with ideas of how you can build buildings using plastic, because people don't like to build buildings out of plastic in Europe. They're more happy about it in America and the US. But in Europe, we're very snobby. We have to have wood. We have to have wood, and we have to have brick, and we have to have all these other things, but to make a house out of waste wouldn't go. So we came up with the idea of a factory in a container, and eventually we got the opportunity to deliver one to a Jordan refugee camp with Waste-Free Oceans. And the first concept was, how do we get the machines in there? How do we get the heating and cooling systems in there? And how do we make this work? So we moved on. And as you can see, we built it. It's an outdoor factory essentially with a tent, and we made it as simple as possible. So you can collect your local plastic. You can grind it up. It doesn't matter if there's quite a lot of contamination in it. As long as there's about 50% meltable plastic, we can make a sheet. We wanted it that simple. It goes on the back of a truck and can be moved in and out. To various areas. It has its own stage and has its own heating and cooling system inside. So essentially you can put the waste in and you get a panel out. Out of that panel, you can then build things. So we also have our own factory here in the UK where we process material, and we sometimes get baled material. As you can see in the pictures, it's completely mixed. It could be anything from bottles to film, which we grind down, and you can see in the bottom right picture, it's not a nice material. It's not a material you can put through an extruder or put into an injection molder. It's mixed. We try and take the metal out because it's worth something. Paper is also worth something, but always there's a bit that gets through, but the process can deal with that. We have these big waffle makers. If you go online and have a look at our webpage, you can see the things in action. We've got no secrets. Have a look. You put the material in, and the machine does all the work, and you take a board out. It's that simple. And of course, you'll generally get a board. If you imagine putting all your paints together and mixing them up, you get brown color. So we add a green or a black dye. Or a dark blue dye. You can't get white if it's recycled. There's a reason why it's called virgin white. So we get this speckledy color. So it'll be speckled green, speckled black, speckled blue. Dark colors work well. And that is 100% waste material. It's not just recycled plastic. It's not off prime. It is waste collected from beaches, collected from the street, that no one wants, and goes into our material. And there's a company called Box who are building these refugee huts out of it. We're making, in the COVID times, COVID rooms and rapid erection rooms for hospitals and that sort of thing. Because the good thing is the outer skin of our board is mainly polyethylene, which is remarkably bacteria resistant on its own. And it's very easy to clean, nothing sticks to it. It's a really good material for healthy housing. And we've had emergency houses up for 5 years in the UK, and they're still there on test. These two buildings are exactly the same, just one is painted. One is in Italy and the other one is in the UK. The Italians have a lot more flair. And that is 100% waste. Apart from the nuts and bolts, everything, including the frame, is made out of Stormboard. And it shows you can build structures, you can stand on the roof. Essentially, it's just an experiment. And you can make it look nice just with the paint. In the UK, it's used a lot at festivals for toilets, for huts, anything outdoors, anything where wood's going to rot. We win hands down. It's a difficult sell because we're more expensive than wood, but once you've taken away the fact that you don't have to paint it, it makes up for it. In the Netherlands, we're building these full toilet cubicles. We've got hoardings around the National Bank in the Netherlands and bathroom areas. As I say, everywhere it's wet, you can get a nice finish. And of course, you don't have to stick a finish onto it, such as a laminate. This is how it comes out of the machine, these colors. Lots of anti-COVID applications for the board, for bins, and everything is easy to jet wash and clean. Farming, again, it's good for cleaning, good for bacteria, good for plants. What's very popular is tables and shop fitting. More and more brands are turning to, can you take our plastic? And we say, yeah, we can take it. But this is the circular economy. And this is where I differ from a lot of people. I believe the circular economy is, you got to take it back. Otherwise, it's not a circle, is it? If you're just saying, please take my waste and deal with it, well, that's linear. That's always how it's always been. Now, so I can deal with it. I can make it into something. But I tell the shops, you've got to take it back. Every kilo you send me, you're getting back. Now, you can have it back as a table or a shelf or as a bin minder, but you're taking it back. That's the closed loop. That's the circular economy. For me, then to find someone else to sell it to, that's not my job. So I'm very hard with these people because essentially all they want to do is hand you all their plastic waste they can't deal with. You deal with it, and that's it. They buy maybe a bench, stick it outside their head office, and I won't have that. Every kilo they send me, they take back. And that's the same with my product. So if I'm making a board, every board I sell, I will take back and make into another board. If that customer's finished with it, I'll take back his offcuts, I'll take back his sawdust. Because you have to walk the walk. This is closed loop and it's a circular economy. And so all these parts are made out of waste from, say, Asda. This is their coat hangers and that sort of thing. We've taken their coat hangers and we've created their stands for it. And very simple things like hoardings and construction. The biggest problem is sorting out a color because, as you can see, these boards are orange. And orange, well, it's a virgin color, which means this board is only 70% recycled content rather than 100%. But it still beats everyone else hands down on the waste front. And then we also have to teach people how to put up boards that are plastic because they know how to nail and screw wood, but they've no idea what to do with plastic. So we create systems for them to use as well. People like the Body Shop are doing big fitting outs with these boards. And you can even get art in it. We've got companies using these like Harvey Nichols in their shop windows and displays. Yeah, it's designer rubbish. It's fantastic. That's me.
Thank you so much, Nick. That was very interesting to hear. Designer rubbish, I like it. We're going to hand over now to Cordie Aziz, who'll be presenting next. Yes.
I'm Cordie Aziz, and I'm the founder of Environment 360, which is a Ghana-based NGO that seeks to create an inclusive circular economy that improves livelihoods. Today, we're going to be talking about how we work with municipalities to create alternative waste management systems, as well as create closed loop solutions, some very similar to what you've heard today. So just a little bit of background on Environment 360. We actually started in 2014. It looks like my slide is not changing. We actually started in 2014. And as discussed, what we do is we support waste management systems. And we particularly have a focus on creating jobs for youth and women within the African context. Mainly what we do is we provide a variety of business and capacity training support to really help them move their businesses from informal to formal. So we do everything from leadership training to bookkeeping training, to development of business models to really get them to move from informal into formal. And instead of working independently, we believe in working with all stakeholders along the value chain, particularly municipal assemblies. Like most places around the world, the local municipal assembly is actually in control of waste. So what we do is we work with them to really be able to develop a variety of solutions. So as I mentioned, we were developed in 2014. In 2015, we actually launched the first successful community recycling program in Ghana, and that's called Evolve. In 2016, we actually became the city recycling coordinator, which was really important because this gave us the ability to collect plastics from all area. In 2017, we became the implementing partner in a project called Picket, which we created the first waste picker-led sorting center here in Accra, Ghana. And in 2019, we started piloting a variety of collection models and incentives through the German federal state of North Rhine-Westphalia in Kumasi and Accra. So how we actually work with organizations is that we essentially go in, we identify the waste pickers that are there. Hopefully my screen will change in just a second. We identify the waste pickers that are there. And what we really seek to do is to reduce the need of plastic litter within the community. So when you actually look at waste management within the Ghanaian context, we struggle with waste management like any other thing. 70% of our economy is still actually informal, and we actually produce about 3,000 metric tons of waste in Accra alone, and about 20% of that is plastic. And we actually only have recycling rates of about 2%. So as you see, it can be quite challenging. One of the main challenges for municipal assemblies is always going to be lack of funds. So we believe that by partnering with the informal sector, they can actually save themselves money, as well as work with informal sector to have increased collection rates of recyclable materials and send less waste to the landfill. Just a little background about Kumasi. We'll be talking about our work with their municipal assembly today. About 16.5% of their waste is plastic, and they produce about 450,000 metric tons annually. Most of the role of collection within Kumasi is actually done through the informal sector. Kumasi Metropolitan Assembly doesn't have a direct role, but they have an aiding role. And Kumasi is also home to KNUST, Kwame Nkrumah Science, University of Science and Technology. And what this means is that essentially you have a lot of budding entrepreneurs and a lot of really interesting ideas and business models that are coming out of Kumasi, particularly when it comes to second life solutions. So what we did with Kumasi is we identified areas of low income. We set up collection points and materials to develop micro collection networks using very basic structures. One of the things we do through our training is that we help collectors develop routes and service for their respective areas, as well as help them develop partnerships with key individuals, such as event planners and large corporations. We actually have developed collection points that actually have set purchase price for plastics that's slightly below the market price. And what this allows us to do is actually run the collection point without using revenue from Environment 360. So the profits of each collection center actually go back into that particular collection center to cover its operational expenses. We basically in Kumasi are working with 27 different agents. When you map though, the number of those agents are working with, it's probably about 400 people. The average agent is actually working with about 15 to 20 people. So as you see, using the informal sector and really strengthening them, you can actually double your impact quite quickly. Every collection point has a management board, which typically consists of an informal sector worker that works from that particular collection point, Environment 360, a member of the solid waste department, as well as the local assembly. And essentially we come together and we're responsible for making critical decisions for the collection point. So adding technology, when to open up registration for new agents, what type of materials we need to collect, and what do we do with additional profits that are excess of operating expenses. So we've established 2 collection points in Kumasi, nearly 300 people receiving income from the collection points, and we collect about 4 metric tons per week, which is actually rising weekly. So by the end of 4th quarter, we expect to be doing 10 metric tons. There are a few challenges to collection points. One is local transportation. This is always an issue, just because the transportation network is one of the most costly things in recycling. There's also the adaptation of technology is key for profitability at collection point. Later on in the technology, or later on in the presentation, we'll talk about the Circular Innovation Hub that we're currently finishing up now, which will hopefully be rolled out to collection points as well. And you must have an identified supply chain for plastics to ensure viable market and profitability. As discussed, I think by some of the other presenters, some material is just more desirable in the market than others. It doesn't mean that other material can't be taken, but it means that you definitely have to work a little bit harder to find a steady supply chain. Particularly with COVID now, we have a major focus on localizing supply chains so that we can process as much of the plastic that our waste pickers collect within Ghana so that they aren't subject to volatility of the global market. Keys to our success in the program are local municipalities are actually great. So all of our space for all of our activities has actually been donated for free, including our sorting center at Pickett. So this means that we actually don't have to pay land costs, which brings the infrastructure costs down dramatically. We also know that there has to be some level of organization among informal sector. I think a lot of people typically have a tendency to work with informal sector as one-off individuals. And what we've realized is that really it works out better for the business and the individual if you actually have some level of organization of those informal sector workers to really give an extra push. And you must have a partner that really understands the intricacies of informal sector. Oftentimes when partnering with individuals, we really look at who are ideal partners. There's a lot of different nuances that come with the informal sector, and they're not always easy to manage. Some people also, of course, will try to take advantage of the informal sector and not want to pay the prices that are relevant. So we always try to get partners that really understand the intricacies of informal sector workers. So now here are just a few pictures of some of the trainings that we do. Most of our waste pickers are women, about 97% of them. However, we have worked with scrap dealers as well to help them diversify into plastic collection. However, what we're realizing is that plastic collection in the informal sector or any type of collection of recyclable is highly specialized, and sometimes people just really don't want to diversify. This is our Asafo collection point. As you see, our collection points are very simple. We typically use containers, create a shade space, and then typically we have the technology as well in this same area. And once again, this is land allotted by the municipal assembly that we don't have to pay for. This is the Pericoso. It was the same thing. The chief of the area gave us this particular land that we've been able to launch. It's set up in a market style. So this literally just has metal sheets with roofing where individual collectors work within. It's almost like a plastic hub. where they share resources. And then we also try to do a variety of incentives like registration on the National Health Insurance Scheme as one of the incentives to really keep them interested and to have some sort of loyalty to the organization. So one of our newer products is the Circular Innovation Hub in Dodowa, which essentially seeks to work with local partners to create products from plastic that we collect and feed them into the local value chain. So what happens is we partner with industry partners. Our first partner is Bamboo Bikes. We've bought in modular recycling technology, I'm sure very similar to what some of the other presenters are using. And essentially what it allows us to do is turn the HDPE and PP into viable products that we can sell on the local market. As mentioned, where you're selling these products is always the key. So this is why we're partnering with industry first. So essentially, when we have an industry partner, we decide on the product that we're going to work to develop, and then we work to prototype and develop it together, and then it immediately feeds into their value chain. So for Bamboo Bikes, our first product that we're making for them are the handlebars that go on their bike. So we've actually just started the design process, and we expect to have the first prototypes out within the next few weeks. In addition to industry partners, we anticipate on opening up the Circular Innovation Hub to other circular entrepreneurs that can afford to actually pay tuition and want to learn more about how to adapt this modular recycling technology and use this recycling technology so that they can actually become owners. And then we have a royalty fee from franchises. So essentially what happens is that once you own a machine, we actually subcontract out work to your particular machine, and we take a percentage from that. And this allows the Circular Innovation Hub to continue to train its waste pickers and other individuals. So our key activities are to provide business and product development and training to waste pickers, identify viable products that are utilized by the local value chain. I really want to stress that we focus on the local value chain. So yes, we know we can probably make products and sell them abroad, but our focus is really here on the local value chain. And then we also want to provide funding to purchase machines and start community franchises. So now we're talking with a variety of impact investors who will hopefully provide the initial seed capital needed to put into a fund where, once again, individuals graduating from the program actually have access to purchase these machines. And then, of course, it's going to create jobs, reduce plastic pollution on land and sea, and then support circularity and local value chains. And when you look at how we plan on scaling, Ghana actually imports about $429 million in plastic. So when you look at the amount of products we're importing with plastic, there's great opportunity to actually substitute some of those products with recycled plastic. Once again, we're mainly looking at non-food grade items and items that aren't high risk. So they may not be identical or ideal for small scale industries and other people, but for cosmetic items, it works very well. We provide training and coaching through the hub to waste pickers to develop sustainable community members, provide access, and then once they have access to purchase their machines, they actually continue to create and innovate other viable products into their own local value chain. So our motto is not necessarily to employ a lot of people, but it's to empower a lot of people to become employers themselves. And one of the things that we think that when you are looking at potential considerations for waste management in Africa, informal sector 100% has to be part of your value chain. A lot of times people have the idea that they're going to come in and partner with private companies. And the bottom line is just that when you're looking at Africa in general, the informal sector really dominates this market, and they really understand how to get the materials that you need. There have to be creation of private sector relationships that support the financing of waste management schemes. Of course, the Circular Innovation Hub that we're doing is great. However, though, there has to be greater subsidization of plastics that are actually collected. Even if you have a very viable, sustainable solution, the African market is a little bit different. And it's subject to volatility. So the bottom line is that since we don't process a lot of our plastic internally, there still has to be some subsidy or some mechanism there that really allows individuals to collect plastic at a fair rate instead of a bottom of the barrel market rate. And there must be a shared value for waste that encourages large scale collection. So there has to be incentives, 100%. If you're looking at communities, it's a little bit different from waste pickers, but you definitely, if particularly with the growing competition in the recycling sector in Africa, if your model is just to come in and pay bottom wages for collection to waste pickers, it doesn't necessarily work out. They're looking for a variety of other social and financial benefits that also help move them up the value chain. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. And I look forward to answering any questions that you may have about Environment 360 or the work that we are doing here in Ghana.
There have been some questions posed in the Q&A box, which I see have been answered, but I think it might be beneficial to answer them live. So I see there was a question from Tristan that said, can you make those recyclable products at a competitive price? I believe he was referring to the products made from recycled fishing nets, but I think in terms of the Stormboard as well, I'm not sure if Bernard and Nick, if you would like to both comment on that, on the competitive pricing of recycled products.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Yeah, the simple answer is yes. Why not? What is the difference? I think that the basis of behind this question was that people think that recycling is expensive. But what they confuse, and that's why I also brought up the definition of recycling, it is collection and it's sorting and it's this kind of thing which are expensive. It's not the recycling process itself. So we can be competitive against virgin. And a lot of our customers actually use it one-to-one to replace virgin. And we can also compete with virgin. Of course, I mean, last year was a bit crazy because the price of virgin dropped dramatically because of the oil price dropping dramatically. But let's say in normal markets, there's no reason why Recyclate cannot compete with any virgin. And the question is, of course, why should Recyclate, which has equal value or similar values as virgin, not also get the price of virgin? Or even get a premium because we even save CO2 emissions. So there are these kind of discussions, but in general, I would say even if we have to sell Recyclate below virgin level prices, we can make a living out of it.
Thank you, Bernard. Nick, I know you referred to the price of your Stormboard being a bit more expensive. I'm not sure if you want to comment on competitive pricing for that.
Sure. I think if we were making the volumes of board, I mean, the problem with us is we sit between plastics and wood. So if I compare my 8 foot by 4 foot sheet with any other plastic sheet of the same thickness, I'm half the price. However, I'm 30% more than the plywood price. The good thing is that plywood is going straight up at the moment by 20%. So we're getting closer. So in comparison with wood, I'm more expensive. But on day one outside, I'm more expensive. On day 100, my board hasn't had any changes, and 10 years later, it's still there, whereas plywood's been changed 3 times and has to be painted, etc., etc. So if I was doing the volume of wood, or even half the volume of wood, and you have to think about it, if we import 33 million plywood panels into the country a year, that would be, to get 1% of that market, I'd need 10 factories of mine. So even if I got up to 1% of that market, yes, I'd be able to match that price, but I don't want to, and I don't intend to. I'm happy between where plastic is and where wood is, but I've no intention of decreasing my margins quite that much.
That's fair enough. I know there's often a bit of a hike in terms of end market value for recycled items due to, in some particular countries, due to the added cost of collection and recycling and all that. So it's good to hear your inputs. So there is one directed at Cordie that says, what mechanism has been most successful in initially engaging the waste pickers? What social initiatives do you find have been most effective in ensuring their ongoing participation in municipal or more formal waste collection systems?
That's a really good question. We've learned a few things. We actually have a screening process for our waste pickers now. We have learned that those individuals that have 2 years or more experience are more likely to benefit from direct business support than those that are freshly entered the business. As mentioned, 97% of our women are waste pickers. This is a large part because we work in women, we'll work in communities. And if you're familiar with the African landscape and sort of recycling in general, I mean, even today, women are unicorns in waste management. And even when we have a tendency to enter into waste management and recycling, we have a tendency to focus in on lower level. Because women have a tendency to be concentrated at the very bottom of the value chain, we found that they actually have more interest when it comes to childcare is a big issue for them. A lot of them have issues with childcare because, I mean, they either can't afford it, and this means that they end up having to take their children out to work with them or to collect. So childcare, in fact, at our innovation hub, we actually built childcare facilities so that women participating in training could have a safe area to leave their children while they're being trained. We've also learned that education and microloans are the key things. National health insurance doesn't seem to be as big of an impetus as we would hope for women. What we've recently started doing is a mobile collection center. We did a survey or a mobile medical center. We did a survey last year, and what we realized is that though the majority of them we had registered on national health insurance, they just weren't comfortable going to regular facilities. So now we've actually started a mobile health clinic where we go around to them quarterly, where basically we help them identify any issues which might be critical and then prompt them to go to the doctor. So these are some of the things that have been a little bit successful and seem to be more desired by our waste pickers, particularly our women waste pickers, when looking at incentives and remaining and keeping loyalty from them.
Thank you so much, Cordie. That's very inspiring to hear. Eric, our other panelist, I believe you're on board. Are you happy to present?
First thing that comes to that you see when you come to Congo, to Kinshasa particularly, is the amount of plastic that is lying on the street, in the gutters and everywhere. And I've been asking myself, why can our generation just leave this problem, which is affecting the whole planet, affecting our malaria because of these trash that you see everywhere. And Record Plus started by doing, and we noticed that there were not many recyclers in town, and why couldn't we do something like that? So we started doing some research.
I think the internet problems seem to be giving Eric a bit more trouble than expected. So sorry about that. In the Q&A box, I see there was a question here directed at you, Nicholas, and that says, did you find that since you have put such large variety of materials through your machines, do they break often, or are they made to be resilient due to the issue of putting different plastics together? I see you did comment on that, but would you like to expand at all?
Sure. Essentially, we do a bit of a pre-processing sort. So if a customer says, I've got this waste for you to make into boards, we don't necessarily put 100% of their waste into their boards, because we have to create a consistent quality. 100% of their waste will go into boards, but we might have to divide it over several production runs, because in the construction industry, they've got to have a consistent quality, and we have to be able to say it's got this shore strength, it's got this impact strength, it bends at this rate, it expands at this rate. And so even though there's complete mix of waste, by looking at it, we create a formula for each type, and we say, oh, we need 30% of that, we need 10% of that, and we need whatever percent of the other. And that's how we build the boards up.
Thank you, Nick. I had another question regarding the Stormboards. Is there a particular end of life process that's been developed? Would you be able to melt or ground down the any boards that were damaged in order to make new ones, or how would that work?
Yeah, of course. I mean, my point of the circular economy is any producer must take their waste back. So we as well will take any boards back, even if people have painted them or stuck vinyls to them, and we will regrind them and make them into boards.
Okay. Thank you, Nick. That's wonderful to hear. I see there is a question here in the chat from Doe that says, Cordie, working with the PVT sector is crucial. Are you working closely with the Ghana Plastics Federation or industry?
So we actually work very close with the Ghana Plastic Manufacturers Association, with GRIPE as well, the Ghana Recycling Initiative the Ghana Recycling Initiative by private enterprise. As you mentioned, this is a key factor, particularly when you talk about circular economy and EPR. So I think that this is something that we've discussed regularly with them. We definitely collaborate on areas where there are similar objectives. And we definitely put a call out for them to even step up more and to really put more money into the subsidization, into the collection of plastics. But we do consider them critical partners in this long run fight to fight plastic pollution in Ghana.
Thank you, Cordie. I see there's another question here that says, Cordie, I love all you're doing. How have you managed the high cost of transport? And this is coming from Susan at the Recycling Center in Kenya.
So this is a great question as well. What we've done is now it's sort of mandated all of our collection points have some level of technology. Mainly it's going to be a flaker or a baler. And this is just because if not, the cost of transportation is just too high. When we look at just transporting, we work mainly in PET bottles. We do HDPE and PP as well. But PET is a main focus for us. And we've just had to couple this by really adding technology to each of the collection point. We've also used a strategy where we've created community agents through our waste pickers. Some of our waste pickers actually have quite a significant amount of land. And what we do is we set up buyback centers there on their particular area and land where they can store for longer periods of time without the pressure of community. And this allows us to also have additional storage space that feeds into our feedstock that we don't have to pay for, and we're not burdened with having to pick it up by a certain time.
Thank you, Cordie. I have a question to pose to the panel as a whole. Can you comment on how the circular economy would work if we were to reduce plastic waste? A lot of the sort of circular economy and a lot of recycling initiatives are a result of plastic waste or plastic use in general. If we were to cut down on this, how would this affect things? Bernard, would you like to go first, and then Nick, and then Eric?
That's an interesting one, because I think in the end, it depends from which perspective you look at it. If you just forget about, let's say, the fact at the moment that a lot of plastic single-use packaging is littered, which is not necessarily needed. If you just look at all the opportunities you have when you use plastic in a lot of applications, I think that there's an interesting future for the use of plastic in a lot of applications in which now other materials are used. But I think we only get circular if we start using the recyclates of all the waste streams we have at the moment. If you realize that, for example, even in Europe, half of the member states still have their landfills open. We are still dumping about 50% of the plastic which goes into the market in landfills or in incinerators. There's a lot to gain. And if you then look at other parts of the world, this balance is even worse in that sense. So just forget about the fact that there is this urgent need to deal with litter issues. If we would set up systems which would allow decent collection and sorting of a lot of those plastics which actually go into the market, we can use them on a very high level. But then the producer responsibility schemes need also to be adapted so that anyone who puts any material on the market or any product on the market should be liable of taking back that material, whether that's for glass, whether that's for cardboard, whether that's for plastic. So, and this is not the case today, and this is the missing link, and this is why going circular is not happening as rapidly as it can go and should go. But it does not stop only with plastic, because the same question applies to wood or to metal or to the other materials, which are also sometimes mismanaged.
Yeah, I actually agree with Bernard as well. I don't think the circular economy is limited to just plastics. When you look in Ghana in our waste stream, yes, we have a very visible plastic issue, but that's just also because plastic doesn't break down or can't easily be dismissed as some of the other materials. But when you look at it, I mean, most of our waste is actually organic waste material, which can be put easily into a circular stream. Textiles and metals as well can easily be put back into the circular stream. I think one thing that we have to be very honest about is that as much as plastic is a menace, it is a resource, and it's not probably going to go anywhere anytime soon. There might be different adaptations to it, but the bottom line is I think we have to become a little bit better at handling it. It's still the cheapest, most feasible application for a lot of different things. So I think that when you have entrepreneurs like Bernard, Nicholas, myself, Eric from the Congo, I think that it's an opportunity to really discuss how to continue to leverage the different types of plastic that will be put out and the new materials that'll come. One thing I think we know about the market is that innovations are nonstop. So I don't see a limit to the circular economy or the ideas or the innovations or the entrepreneurs or the different technologies that are going to come out to really push it ahead.
Again, I'd agree. It's not just plastics, but once we've used up all the plastics, I will start mining landfill. Once I've used all that up, I'll be a very happy man. But I mean, in our plant, we're also taking food waste. We've got a machine that takes the proteins out of that, and we create fish food, fish bait. And we'll take any waste. And we've got a machine where we're taking fleeces and turning them into a wall covering. There's plenty of other room to make this circular, and we've got so far to go, that I don't think we'll reach it for a long time. Unfortunately, we'll try.
Thank you. I think you raised some very good points. It's just an interesting potential issue that could arise. I see we have had a few more comments in the chat. There was a comment from Eric, and I believe Christine will be presenting on his behalf due to the internet issue. But just a message from Eric that says, Recoplast Congo actually turns plastic waste into ecological beams called EcoWood to fight against deforestation. Our innovation is that we mix all types of plastic waste to get the plastic beams. Thank you so much, Eric. And we appreciate, I think with all the time we've all spent online during meetings in this last year, I think we can all appreciate the internet trouble that can pose very big issues. Christine, I will promote you to a panelist, and then you should be able to present, if that's all right. Christine should be joining us shortly, and then she'll be able to present on behalf of Eric.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Christine. Thank you for stepping up for us this afternoon.
Sure. I just wanted to say that I'm sure I will not be able to present this as well as Eric Casinga can, since this is his initiative, but I would love to be able to make sure that everyone saw his deck and the work that he's doing in the Congo. And I probably won't be able to answer his questions as well as he could, but again, I just would love to take everybody through the deck and share what Recoplast is doing. So Recoplast is a startup in the DR Congo, in the DRC, that seeks to radically impact waste management through collection and upcycling into EcoWood and other types of upcycled products, while at the same time upskilling a local workforce into good-paying manufacturing jobs and educating the community about environmental conservation. And I think what what Eric was wanting to lead with was talking about, you know, being a young person emerging in the DRC after coming back and being a Yali Fellow in the United States, realizes that, you know, everywhere you go in Kinshasa, there is plastic waste everywhere. Like everyone else has said, without an intervention, plastics will be part of our lives for years to come. And the impact of this plastic waste on the communities, on the health and the safety of communities and the environment, the impact is devastating. And so from his perspective, wanting to make a real change. The idea is that through Recoplast Congo, you know, where you see tables and chairs and desks and the pallets of things that get imported into the country, even homes could be made from upcycled plastic and protect the trees, you know, from the Congo Basin for generations to come. So if you can go to the next slide. Yeah, so I mean, I think this is a really good sort of visual of some really common scenes in the DRC where there is, you know, there's just no effective waste management. And a lot of what you see here ends up in ravines and even most importantly, into the Congo River. And as you know, the Congo River flows directly into the Atlantic Ocean. You can go to the next slide. Yeah, so there's an average of 3,000 tons of plastic waste dumped in Kinshasa daily. Like you saw in the pictures before, if you can go to the next slide. And over 50,000 trees destroyed every minute. And as someone once said to me, you know, if you think about the Amazon rainforest being the right lung of the earth, then the Congo Basin is the left. And as we think about the destruction of the trees and the forests and what that does to our planet, Recoplast believes that EcoWood really is the alternative. You can go on to the next slide. So like many of the other presentations, right? The idea that by saving, by upcycling this plastic waste, there is an equivalence to the trees that would be saved and the offset to the carbon. And if you can go on to the next slide. Yeah, so we want to just talk a little bit about how it works. So again, I'm not the technical person, but you know, there is a plastic waste collection that is collected and thoroughly washed, and through the process of converting it into granules such as PET and the other types of granules that people have discussed, Recoplast is upcycling into EcoWood and PVC and other types of usable goods that we see can be used as through businesses and schools and lots of other means. You can go on to the next slide. Yeah, I mean, I think when I think about Kinshasa and I think about the import of so many goods coming in on shipping pallets, and the idea that EcoWood can be used for shipping pallets, and the idea when you look at schools all across the country, all across the world really, where we can produce school chairs and desks, offsetting again that need for wood. There's just without literally sacrificing a single tree, there is just so much opportunity to integrate EcoWood into our lives and into the lifestyle. It's really a way of life, right? Moving forward in the DRC. You can go to the next slide. Yeah, so just a little bit of background on how Recoplast started. It's a very young company beginning in 2020. although the idea started well before then. Eric Casinga was a YALI fellow and came back to the DRC, and eventually through, you know, creating this plan for Recoplast, he was incubated at Orange Corners of the Embassy of the Netherlands, and after that was able to receive funding from the National Assembly, which was really the first time in the DRC the National Assembly had provided seed funding to young entrepreneurs. So this was a big deal, and it was through that seed funding that allowed Recoplast to establish their first factory. They have been producing EcoWood, they've been producing PVC, and they partner with workers who really believe equally in the product with conservation values and the mindset that Recoplast must be the future. Move on to the next slide. Yeah, so here's just a timeline. Like, as you can see, it's really about a year old in terms of when it actually was incubated. Moving on to the next slide. We talked a little bit about this as well, and the vision that Recoplast has for the EcoWood and the many forms it can take on to integrate into the daily life and the building of homes and other industrial impacts. Move on to the next slide. Sorry, I'm doing this off the cuff here. So Recoplast is really proud of their alignment with the Sustainable Development Goals as well, and such as reducing poverty, and that obviously helps speak to upskilling workforce, protecting aquatic life, you know, implicating women and young people in their activities. Recoplast Congo and Eric Casinga himself are well embedded into community work, organizations, partnering with organizations, and making Recoplast sort of very open and accessible to people who are interested in learning about how they can continue to impact their communities as well. And the idea of a person establishing from nothing a factory in the DRC is a huge feat. It's a really big deal in a challenging landscape. So Recoplast is really proud of their alignment with these sustainable development goals. You can go to the next slide. Yeah, so you can learn more by going to the website, which is recoplast-congo.com, and also find them on Instagram and Facebook. And yeah, I think there was one more slide just to show some really proud workers. I mean, I think that going to the idea that people in the community want to be part of this change, want to help, want to learn, want to upskill. And it's really the people and the workers at Recoplast that really helped make this vision come to life.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you stepping up to share that with us. It's really wonderful to hear what Recoplast is doing, Eric and Christine. Thank you so much for sharing that. At this stage, I think we'll go back to the questions. I wonder, Eric, I'm not too sure if you're still with us and if you'd rather type your responses, but there were some questions in the Q&A regarding the competitive pricing of recycled products. I wonder if you would like to just perhaps if you have any comments on that topic, if you would like to post those in the chat box just so that we can read those out as well. I think we can open this to the panel as a whole that says, looking at all the interventions mentioned, what will be the potential challenges if you were to scale up the production of these products?
Yeah, there are of course, I mean, but let me look at it from, let's say, the challenge we went through in Denmark, which is, as you probably know, not the poorest country on the planet. But it goes for a lot of recyclers also in Europe, is a lot of recycling companies are actually not bankable. And that has to do with balance sheets and the way the financial world is working. And of course, that is, you will see similar impacts also in other parts of the world, and maybe even worse. And it has to do, and for the time being, let's say just in a country like the Netherlands, some of the recyclers are not even insured anymore because the insurance company think they go on fire because they are mixing them up with waste management companies. or scrap dealers, metal scrap dealers, which sometimes get fire. So there are issues even in let's say the richer countries on the planet. So in the case of plastics, it is funded by family private capital. And then part of that is then co-financed by bankers because they have the security of, or let's say, the family capitals behind it. But that doesn't work for all. We have worked and we looked, for example, also if we are looking to expand the business because we want to build other factories in other parts of the world. That's a challenge. It's too big investment for crowdfunding. It's maybe too small for the European Investment Bank or the World Bank because they can only think about the hundreds of millions. So one of the things we're looking at is maybe to propose to the World Bank to maybe build 10 factories because that would then reach the levels of the kind of funding they are looking at. On the other hand, we see also changes in the financial world, especially in the last 6 months. I've seen a lot of interest from the financial equity funds to be part of this change. So it may be getting easier to get access to actually finance your expansion. In the case of Eric, I mean, you just saw he got some support from public funding. I think also the authorities have to look at what this brings because financing landfills is also expensive and financing litter issues is also quite expensive. So if they just use the money they have in a different way, it may already be on the way out into solutions. But funding is an issue, and it also has to do with the fact that, let's say, it's difficult for recyclers. And I think Nick gave you the example before. They're welcome to give you the waste, but they're not a customer for the product you make out of it. So you have to develop your own markets. And this is also changing. So I agree with Nick, and we see that also in a lot of recyclers in Europe now. I'm okay to accept your waste, but you're the customer of the product coming out of that. And this is also new thinking for a lot of retailers and a lot of brand owners. They're not used to that. So we are in a transition phase. And if, of course, you know that you can sell the product to somebody, you already have a kind of security of sale, it is easier to also get bankable.
Yeah, from our point of view, if we can get past this demand issue of being accepted in the construction industry, we'll find the money. I don't see that being an issue. My issue at the moment is stopping plastic coming. We had one company, cosmetic company called Lush, who decided in their brilliance to put on their Facebook page, stop sending us all your plastics, send it to Stormboard. And we had several trucks arrive outside the door and we knew nothing about it. You know, it's I can get the waste for free. I can get people to pay me to take it away. What I can't get is people to accept the product instead of plywood because it's maybe not the corporate color. That's my biggest issue.
Yeah, so I would agree with Bernard and Nicholas. I think Environment 360, because we are an NGO, we do have a private company attached to us that helps finance our work. But I think our business model is inherently different. Environment 360 really focuses in on training and empowering people to become wastepreneurs. However, we do talk about some of the challenges that they are going to face with their materials, and a lot of it is market acceptance. Here in Ghana, we actually have people that make things from recycled plastic. You'd never know because they don't put made from recycled plastic on it because it kills the market, right? They're not going to get any additional kudos for it. People probably even want to pay less for it. But I mean, it's just not how it works. So for us, this is why we also adapted the strategy of working with industry partners and then developing products specifically for them. So the way our strategy is probably very backwards. So instead of us saying, we're gonna create this and try to push it to the market, what we do is have conversations with large brands, which may sell internationally themselves, or which already have a set market, and then we convince them to prototype and move directly into their value chain to help lower the risk for our wastepreneurs. So I think for us, we've chosen to take the opposite approach, just because we understand that there is sometimes difficulty in getting the market to accept a product. Also in Ghana, and particularly when you're introducing something for construction or something for industry, it becomes a little bit difficult because it has to be approved by Ghana Standards Authority. And this is a very lengthy process here in Ghana. I think it probably maybe is a little bit more efficient in the Western world. But even recently, we just had a gentleman who's been building with blocks made with plastic, and he was having such an issue with Ghana Standards Authority. He actually got funding from the Danish to actually construct the house so that he could basically illustrate that the house would be able to stand for a minimum of 5 years without issues. So I think that you have to be really creative with your approach. And I think that you definitely have to have tenacity and be willing to stand the test of time and really believe in your product when you enter into this particular market.
Maybe to add on to those comments, which are very valid. There's of course also the value of the recyclate in a certain way. If you take PET bottles as an example, I mean, I was involved in one of the first bottle-to-bottle food-approved PET recycling plants in Europe. If you look at the value of the recyclate when it goes to fiber markets, and you compare that, let's say, when this same recyclate can go to the bottle-to-bottle food-approved market, that price level is about a factor 2. So the added value is if you can go back to the original applications in this specific case. So if you can go back from a bottle to bottle with food grade, you get close to virgin prices or even over virgin prices. Whereas if you go to a fiber market, you may get half of the value. So, and I think that has to do with purity. In the example I gave about fishing gear, it's the same. So we can of course sell recyclate to other applications, but the highest value we can get is back into the fiber market. But then, of course, we need to make sure that our quality is stable enough for the fiber producers to accept that recyclate on an ongoing business. And fortunately, we've been able now to prove it, but it was a 7 to 8 year journey with a lot of trial and errors and a lot of investments in getting the material purer and purer. Now, of course, it's up to that market also to embrace that and start taking that kind of recyclate at a 10 or 20 or 30% content and slowly going towards 50 to 100%. So a part of the financing issue and the work, let's say the economic factors of a recycling plant success is of course also the quality of the recyclates which you're able to supply on a regular basis to the converting industry, which means investments on all sides.
Thank you for those responses. Eric has typed a few comments as well, noting that Recoplast is having a lot of challenges, such as the access to funding to get good machinery and plastic collection equipment, and they also need a bigger space to scale up their business. They're still in talks with local government to get space, but they will need to build on it themselves. Then his other point was the other issue is health and safety of our collectors. We are giving them the necessary training and personal protective equipment to assist. But those are some of the challenges they might face if they were to scale up their operation. I think we have time for 1 or 2 final questions. I see there's one here from Belinda that says, there is so much proof of concept, but market is not ready. We need a social conscious change. How does extended producer responsibility work in developed countries? Are there levies used to subsidize recycling or upcycling or development of new products? Should we keep the same order? Bernard, Nicholas, and then Cordie, if you'd like to add.
I think the answer, if you look at the present day EPR schemes, so extended producer responsibility schemes, they are more focused on supporting collection. They're not so much focused on using that material back into a kind of circular approach. So there is a need, even in the let's say in the Western world, to modernize the EPR schemes. What we see happening, and which is now part of, let's say, European legislation, is that for some products, pledges have been made by retailers and major brands, but the Commission is pushing to double, let's say, the uptake of recyclates in the next couple of years. So they've asked the industry to come forward with voluntary pledges. But they have said at the same time, but if it's not going to be voluntary, then we may need to help you to speed up that process, and we're going to put it into legislation. So, for example, for the PET bottle, there's now a minimum mandatory recycling content in the European law, because industry did not meet up with the promises they made, and they had 20 years to do that. So, as an industry, that's also an advice as an industry, if it's not going to be proactive and voluntary, there is always a risk that governments will step in with legislation. And I think if instead of seeing waste as a problem, but see that as a raw material, and go on a strategic level, and make sure that anytime you buy something, part of that at least is recycled material, there's no need for legislation, because then the market will turn itself. But if you start fighting against it, legislation is coming.
So just to add on to that, I do think EPR is extended producer responsibility is 100% necessary. I'm just going to take the stance and say that if it's voluntary, it's not going to work. If you're asking corporations who have stakeholders whose major goal is to make money and be profitable, I mean, they're just not going to willingly pony up the billions of dollars needed to fix the problem. It should be noted that most private companies knew of this issue 30 years ago and have had plenty of chances to actually correct the issue or develop other innovations. I think that it definitely is going to have to be something, particularly in developing countries, which have higher stakes for multinational companies, is definitely going to have to be 100% enforced by government. There's going to have to be policy, and I think it's going to have to be really aggressive. I agree with Bernard. Most of the activities financed through EPR are on collection, which is great, but there needs to be more money focused in on innovation in design as well. I think we all know circular economy really starts with the beginning of the design. So I think that it's important just to note that private companies do play a major role in all of the education, from consumer education to subsidizing to innovation. I don't think we should allow them to choose just one particular area, and I don't think that we should give them the opportunity to choose what they want to do. Because I mean, you can't ask the person that created the problem to solve it independently. I just don't think it works that way.
From our point of view in the UK, EPR just doesn't work. And it's simply what Bernard said, collection equals recycling. So the word in the UK for recycling is collection, and collection is recycling. The fact that nothing happens to that material afterwards, other than it gets dumped on Turkey or wherever, or exported to be burnt in Europe, no one cares about it. If it's collected and it's collected cheap, you get the job. So EPR doesn't work, PRN doesn't work. EPR doesn't even really exist, neither does the circular economy. And we have all the subsidies for this go to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation so she can write some, some more reports on it, which drives me up the wall. And we get some butterfly system, and then this system and that system. And actually, at some point, you've got to take your material, put it into one of Bernard's machines, and make something out of it. And you need the guys to collect it, and you need systems to do that. So, Cordie's got a great system to get all the stuff collected. Bernard's got a system to make stuff out of it. But there's absolutely no reason why anyone should do that unless they're forced to, because it's much easier just to say, oh, been recycled, collected.
Thank you so much, all three of you, for that very valuable contribution. I see there have been quite a few agreements with you in the chat box. I don't see any more questions, but there have been a few more comments from Eric, so I'm just going to go through those, and then we'll hand over to Alexander from Waste Free Ocean to wrap up the session today. In response to one of the earlier questions about some of the challenges, I believe, Eric responded and said the plastic flakes have become part of their process for Recoplast, so they're getting interest on this product for the export markets. And the other good thing is that the raw material is very available in the Congo. And these two elements clearly show that there is a future for Recoplast, so we can scale up easily and replicate our business model anywhere. And then he also commented that in all our process, data is collected and people are sensitized to know the danger of plastic waste on their health and the environment as a whole. So I don't see any more questions at this stage, but if anyone has any at a later stage, you're welcome to email us and we can pass those on to the panelists. But just before I hand over to Alexander to wrap things up for this afternoon, I just want to say a special thank you to all four of our panelists today. It was very wonderful to hear your experiences and the products that and programs that you're rolling out. I think especially in the waste and environmental sector, it can be very easy to focus on the negative. So it's been very inspiring to hear all the wonderful work that's being done. And we look forward to working with you all in the future and hearing how the businesses grow. For now, I'm going to hand over to Alexander from Waste Free Oceans to wrap up the session today. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Before wrapping up, maybe I could show a few slides about Waste Free Oceans, actually why we have started to be active in Africa. I think the two sessions today clearly demonstrated there is a need for more collaboration. I don't think we should wait another year before organizing these kind of webinars. There is so much need of exchange of information about what is being done and what we all could be doing together and learn from each other. I think if COVID-19 has proven that we can learn from each other, I think this is the time we should be doing it. Started almost, well, 10 years ago. We're celebrating 10th anniversary, I think, this month, to do Fishing for Litter initiatives, beach cleanups, closing the loop by creating iconic products, and something very important, raising awareness and education. We worked with many stakeholders over the last 10 years, and we also want to thank all these stakeholders for having engaged with us in all these remediation actions. Although we know that all the remediation actions we've done are peanuts in comparison to the pollution that is out there in the world. But I think we need all to continue in driving this agenda and indicating how important it is to modify actually consumption patterns. Waste Free Oceans started primarily to influence European regulation, to modify the European Maritime Fisheries Fund, which is a fund managed by the European Commission of a couple of billions, funding fisheries, fishery activity, where actually fishermen were being paid not to go out fishing because they had achieved their quotas. So we introduced a few amendments in that regulation to actually pay fishermen during their period where they were not supposed to fish to go and clean coastal areas. This is how the whole story started. And then later on, we ended up in making iconic products out of this. Our first product was the detergent bottle produced from ocean waste collected in Rio de Janeiro during the Olympic Games, where Ecover was our partner, and we created a recycled HDPE bottle for detergent. Today, we are globally present, so we are still establishing legal entities in some part of the world, but we are very happy that the ability to use some of the waste catcher technology, which started in France 10 years ago, is actually now moving out in several other parts of the world. Not to be there as, I would say, the only tool existing. It's there to show that you need to take things out of the water. We were often confronted with discussion points that in nice areas, people don't want to see our trash catchers because there's supposed to be no waste in very nice touristic places. But the truth is that even if it's not being seen as floating on the water, there is so much waste out there, and we need to continue to look into it. So you've seen a lot of these products already. I'm not going to go through these slides. This is the Global Waste Free Oceans team. We're doing quite a lot of projects, which some of them you heard in Europe, but in other parts of the world as well. In the Americas, in Dominican Republic, we are starting to look into capacity building for making these shelters. Nick has been explaining about all of them. Started one actually in Jordan, so we are continuing. We also have these projects on the rivers in Mumbai. And we continue to develop these projects at a global level. Here I'll leave the floor now to Cyrielle, who will explain a little bit why we started in Africa and what the African roadshow of Waste Free Oceans basically.
Waste Free Ocean Africa started back in September 2020. And we decided to set up a unique project that extends to 10 African countries. So basically what we will be doing is we are organizing educational and cleaning event in each country to demonstrate the practical aspect of using the Waste Free Ocean troll that you can see on the pictures to try to catch marine debris. So the troll has been shipped from Brussels to Africa, and we will use in African waterways in each country where our partners are. Those countries are Ghana, Nigeria, Cameroon, Gabon, Congo, and Tanzania. And we will ensure that the collected plastic waste will be recycled into valuable products to contribute to the African circular economy. Next slide. So those are the 10 countries that are part of the roadshow. The roadshow has already started from the country of Togo and Ivory Coast with an educational project aimed at children, and we are currently finishing the filming of this educational video, and we are working with 86 schools in Togo and in Ivory Coast, and we will reach about 40,000 children. And after these two countries, we had recently the event in Ghana, where we have shipped one of our troll, and the event was also filmed and in the Ghanaian national TV. Nigeria, for now, we are still awaiting for the beginning of the event. We are working with a recycler and with BASF that will rent one of our troll for also a cleaning event in Nigeria. And then in Cameroon, this is the latest country we have reached, also for a roadshow event to clean a lake and remove a plant that is actually cleaning the ecosystem of the region in Cameroon. And the troll has arrived in Gabon today for an upcoming event on 31 May. And as you can see, the next destination are Congo, Kenya, Tanzania, and Egypt for basically the same kind of project or educational event. In Kenya, we will be doing a cleaning event with a lot of storytelling, beautiful storytelling that inspire with like turtle stories. And in Tanzania, we will be sending a Waste Free Ocean team for a closing event of the roadshow. We decided to do it in Tanzania, and this is gonna be also something very big and with beautiful story coming out of it. Next slide, please. So here are our heroes and partners from each country. Some of them, like Eric, is there, as you can see. But yeah, next slide. Next slide. This is the webinar, the current webinar that we have organized. So here you can see a few images of the project made in Togo and Ivory Coast with the kids and with the school. So this project is done, and we are just currently waiting for the finalization of the official video. Next slide. So here are also a few images of the project, the event organized in Ghana with the Waste Free Ocean Troll. And as I said, this event was recorded in the national Ghanaian TV. Next slide. So yes, this is also the upcoming event with Nigeria, in partnership with BASF and Recycler, also a cleaning event. Next slide. Here are also a few images of the roadshow in Cameroon, and this is the Lake Osa, and we were removing the Salvinia plant that was a threat for the lake and the local economies. So the plant has been removed thanks to the Waste Free Ocean Troll. Next slide. And we are now in Gabon, and the event will start on May 31. And for the next country, we are still awaiting for a few more detail to finalize the event. And that's it for all the project we are currently doing in Africa. And we would like to thank all our partners in this project, and we are looking forward for the Waste Free Ocean Roadshow #2. This one was our first tour in Africa, and we are looking forward for our second tour.
Okay, thank you very much, Cyrielle. So now a few closing remarks. Well, first of all, thank all the speakers of this second session for the excellent contribution. I think it was really worthwhile to listen to all your experience, basically in plastics recycling or running an NGO. I was impressed about what has been done in Ghana and how things can rapidly evolve. I've been working for about 30 years in the plastics industry, and Bernard knows me since all those years. We were together at the start of plastics recycling basically in Europe. And if it took us 30 years in Europe to now basically understand why we need to incorporate recycled material, I can just push and hope that Africa will need maybe 5 to 10 years before reaching our level. Things can go much faster now. And I think that's the good news about it. We need to remain patient, but we need to continue to drive this circularity for the sake of the planet. So let me also thank two persons in particular. That's Tara, who has done an excellent job in moderating this session. I haven't seen the picture. I haven't seen your video, Tara. So maybe you can show yourself. And Cyrielle, which we have seen. I think both ladies have been working pretty well together the last couple of weeks in handling the preparation of this webinar. And we would be delighted to continue the journey, specifically on getting the second African Roadshow also presented with more African countries in the future. So we are here from Europe, from north to south, as was said this morning, to collaborate. We can learn from Africa. Europe can learn from Africa. Europe needs Africa, and Africa can learn from Europe. So having said that, I wish everybody a very nice rest of the day, and hope that you all enjoyed this first session of webinars that we organized together. And I'm looking forward to continuing this journey. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, everyone. I'm unfortunately joining from a desktop, and so I don't have the option to turn on a webcam. But again, thank you so much to our speakers. It was wonderful to have you with us today. We will be sending out the slides for the Recoplast presentation, and we will be in contact about other presentations. And we really just want to say thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today.